starting off the show today talking about silage, and in order to make good silage and reduce storage loss, sometimes a farmer needs a little help from inoculants. Now, this is a complex issue, but there are some things you can do to figure out if this is the best management practice for you. Extension's Brad Schick joined me to discuss what inoculants are and the role they play in corn silage.
Right. So inoculants are essentially bacterial cultures that assist in the fermentation process of silage. So they're naturally occurring, but we can also add some to the silage to make a better ensiling process, a better fermentation process. That's the long and the short of what inoculants are.
And Brad, how does one decide what type of inoculant to use?
Right. So there's a couple thoughts when you're thinking about an inoculant. The one thing is that it doesn't fix problems necessarily, but it can help fix some of the problems. When we think about it, you have to think if you're doing an upfront fermentation issue, that's where you need help, or you're needing more on the aerobic stability. So as you're potentially feeding out that silage, so after the process is complete, that means that there's different names for those. So we have our homolactic or our heterolactic bacteria inoculants, and those will determine whether or not what you choose for those issues, whether the aerobic stability, upfront fermentation, or really both.
So when a farmer inoculates corn silage, is there any benefit that can be passed on to the animal that's going to eat it?
There's kind of some mixed results when we talk about really whether or not there's a benefit to the animal. There's some data showing there might be for dairies, there might be some milk production increases, but really the data is kind of not sure on that right now. The biggest advantage will be there's less dry matter, or there's more dry matter available in terms of the producer, not necessarily for the animal themselves.
Okay, so say a farmer comes to you and says, I've decided that I want to inoculate my corn silage. Take us through that process.
So the first step would be considering whether or not you want to use it or not. If you have a perfect silage and it's a perfect year, some may consider not using an inoculant. You might decide to use it just as a kind of an insurance policy as well, and depending on which one you want. So like if you're thinking about those upfront fermentation, you want a little bit better or faster fermentation, you're looking at that like the homolactic. So that's the type of inoculant you'd want. If you're looking for that more aerobic stability, you're going to look at that heterolactic bacteria. So that's like your classic Lactobacillus buchneri. That would be the big name that everyone hears is L. buchneri would be the one. Another thing to consider is buying a good product of inoculant. When we think about the standard of inoculants, we talk about colony forming units or CFUs per gram of forage, fresh forage. So the standard is 100,000 CFUs per gram of forage. That's typically when we talk about our homolactic bacteria, and that's generally the industry standard.
And finally, I think it's important to hammer home that inoculants aren't a substitute for good management practices like a timely harvest and proper storage, right?
Right. You're putting up the silage at the right moisture, the correct moisture, packing it correctly, making sure that you're getting a really good pack and eliminating that oxygen. This is an anaerobic fermentation, so we need to get rid of that oxygen. Covering that silage is going to be important too. You're going to minimize your losses. So covering with plastic is going to reduce dry matter loss. Those are all situations, when we talk about damage, drought or hail, still need to make sure we're doing a good job of putting up the silage and checking moisture. Those are all things we just have to do on any given year. But inoculating any given year might be a good choice too, just looking at the benefits of using an inoculant with our corn silage.